David.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Yeah, it's great to have you on again, mate.
Thank you. More than happy to be here.
And to everyone listening, welcome to the news review. I'm your co-host Stelios, and we're joined by the one and only David Nicolaou. David, what do you think about my new setup here?
It's very nice.
It's discombobulating a little bit, though, isn't it?
It's just it's nice to throw a spanner into the works, isn't it, and just make life a little bit harder than it normally has been.
I've always wanted to use the word discombobulating in a sentence.
Discombobulate, yeah. Good, isn't it?
It's a nice one, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I love words. It's great, isn't it?
It's like I get surprised with myself when it comes out my mouth. It's like, oh, look, clever word.
Yeah. Anything more than 3 syllables is like wiping your bum on silk, isn't it? That's what they say.
Is that what they say?
That's what they say, yeah.
Wow. I definitely have wiped my bum with silk this morning. Then, yeah.
There you go.
But how are you, mate? How's it been up there?
Very hot. Trade has been a challenge in this heat. Yeah, it is what it is. It's summer. We're going to have some hot weeks. You know, we mark it on the calendar as heat wave or whatever. And every time it happens, you know, trade drops away. But, you know, this is England. It will rain at some point.
This is the time for beer gardens to make their money.
Yeah. You can't have it all your own way. And we just use this time. We've got loads of maintenance done. We've got loads of cleaning done. We've got loads. I mean, you've been to my shop. I am slightly the right side of OCD.
I was going to say, I don't think I've been on a Friday when it's busy, much to your chagrin, and I just turn up. And even
fancy seeing you here on a Friday.
It wasn't quite tea time.
No, it wasn't. No.
But, you know, I noticed how clean the place was. It is always spotless, yeah.
I like to work in a tidy environment, that's the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. That's the best way. And also, you can probably send some staff home early, let them go and enjoy it on rotation, or you go and enjoy it with the kids or whatever.
We tend to leave early and leave the junior ones to lock up now. So we've got some rising stars coming up now. It's stepping forward. So, you know, it's making my life a bit easier. So,
lovely. You spoke with our writer and you made it into our case study articles once again.
I know.
Yeah. Well done, you.
Thank you very much. And,
well done, me.
Thank you for the clean bain-marie.
Well, I didn't clean it. You did.
Well, you were integral to the whole process, I think.
Yeah, I guess that is true, although I did none of the manual labour.
Well, me neither, to be honest. We just dumped it in and walked away.
I'm actually really grateful for the fact that that's twice now you've tested 2 of our products. Well, once was before the launch and one was immediately after the launch.
Yeah.
I guess the risk to a bain-marie is minimal, especially after we've tested it loads anyway.
Sure.
But you did test the deep fryer cleaner on your gleaming, expensive Florigo frying range.
It was a rather new range at the time, I seem to remember, that didn't really need that much cleaning, but it came up like a new pin.
And I remember saying to people when we were testing the deep fryer cleaner, look, you know, if anything goes wrong, we'll pay for new pans. It's not a problem. And I think some people were literally hoping that something would go wrong.
Yeah, get 3 new pans,
Thank you. And your bain-marie is better off for it.
Yeah, no, and it's fantastic. And it did a wonderful job on the batter mixer too. We're in a very hard water area here.
Yeah.
So every time you mix sort of water and flour together, you get a residual, you know, you get like this lime seems to precipitate out, stick to the side of the batter mixer steel bucket. And we've used Fernox in the past, which is really nasty stuff. And it takes, 20, 30 litres of rinsing to try and get the damn stuff off. And you've got to be really careful, but your stuff's just vinegary.
And that's the idea. You know, it's a real, I forgot the word they call it. I forgot the word, but it's a real high concentration acid. But it's not like brick acid. It's not hydrochloric acid. It's not going to, don't get me wrong, always be careful with any form of cleaning products and chemicals. But it is not going to strip your skin off. It's not going to burn the material that it's touching. It's not going to make the silicone go stiff. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, we used to soak our bain-marie once a week. We'd just, at my dad's shop, we'd just put it in on a Saturday. And I remember the stuff used to come out of the bucket, the 5 litre bottle. And it was really pink. It hit the water and it starts steaming and spitting. And I remember thinking that probably can't be great.
It's not only that, but we're living in a very litigious world. If you don't provide the right amount of PPE and the right amount of training and somebody injures themselves, it's on you.
Yeah.
Whereas this stuff, I'm sure you can water it down, put it in your chips. You don't do that.
No, I wouldn't do that.
No, don't do that. But
the key thing is always respect the products. Because we did the story a while ago, didn't we, where someone got salt mixed up with caustic soda, and you've always not to go back to old stories, but this is always at the bottom of my mind when when I'm thinking what could go wrong if somebody's using a cleaning product.
And if it can go wrong, it will go wrong.
And absolutely. And, the heavy duty degreaser, again, that's another product that, even if somebody was to use it, it's not, wrong incorrectly, it's not going to harm them, well, to some degree. Again, like anything, it's, the detail is in the extremes, isn't it?
Sure.
So, but yeah, thanks for testing it, or thanks you for having
my pleasure. No, it was really good. Yeah,
and I don't want anybody thinking that we force you to try it because you do the podcast. You've always been quite keen to try these products early on. So
no, I've actually bought some more because we're doing the dishwashing this week with it anyway.
Yeah,
we've got an automatic dishwasher that gets a bit furred up, even though we've got like scale filters and salt filters on it. It still gets furred up.
Yeah, if you've got hard water, it will do.
Yeah, very hard water around here. So yeah, we're gonna go with the see if it just to the dishwasher.
I'm sure it'll work. It'll work on that fancy coffee machine you got as well, I reckon.
I might be scaling the coffee machine when I go on holiday as well. It might well do the insides of that very nicely.
Yeah, you see that. Look, we always keep trying. If anybody's got an idea, you know how many messages I get, people saying, "Oh, I'd like this product to be replaced next." And there's a lot of people that really do rely on our cleaning products now. So. Yeah. We will try, and we've got some...
Yeah, the good stuff.
Yeah, and as you know, I've got plans to bring out so much more. Moving onto the juicy topics of today, David. You have chosen many of these articles, and actually, you've sort of took a role in producing this podcast because you have now reordered them all as well.
I have.
So you took
to suit my running order on my documents on screen. So yeah,
you just think it sounds like laziness. It is just pure laziness, isn't it? But it's all right. I'll be trying to chase it because we're not going in the route that I did it. So the first article you chose is Deliveroo takes flight. Drone delivery trial launches in Dublin. And summary is Deliveroo has launched a pilot program in Dublin to deliver food by drone, promising 10-minute delivery times for certain locations. Partnering with drone delivery firm Manna, Deliveroo aims to scale the tech if the pilot succeeds. Questions remain about regulations, noise, and practicality. And for anybody listening, you can find that article on our website under the blog section. David, why did this one stand out to you?
Well, we've already covered the trial that Manna did with the drone delivery, and it's now moved on to the second stage. So I thought it was worth revisiting. Now Deliveries jumped on it, and they have now started. It's just it's available on their app. You can track it on the app. But the wonderful thing is, we get into a point now where we've got the delivery times have dropped from, on average, 15 minutes to 3.5 minutes in a 10-kilometre radius. So that's enabling people who have got very, very sort of quality-sensitive food to be able to get food out the door. And fish and chips fall into this category. I mean, we when you look at the cooking times and the pickup times, your food with delivery might be in transit for half an hour from cooking to delivery. And if anything that can get our product to a customer faster and fresher, it's got to be a win for us, for our industry, for sure. There's a chap that's doing sushi, and he's been one of the partners, and he said that it's absolutely fantastic. The product is pristine, and it's delivered very quickly, very fresh, and he never dreamed that he'd be able to sort of expand his business to such a point. So it's coming forwards now that we're starting to see big progresses now in the delivery aggregators. Looking at some numbers, we've got you can increase your delivery area by 6.5 times. So you can get from a 10-kilometre radius to a 25-kilometre radius within sort of the sort of 10 to 15 minute target that they're putting on it. You can increase the deliveries around, I think it's 15 deliveries an hour compared to 3 per hour by car. So you can move more product more quickly. Basically it's a 5 times frequency delivery, 5 times increase in your delivery frequencies. You've got an expanded reach, and the cost is massively lower. They've got the cost down to $2 a delivery now, as opposed to 15 to 30% fees. I mean, some of that cost saving is going to feed in.
I don't think the fees are going to drop.
I think it's going to have to do, because I think like everything else, the technologies, somebody else will come out with a service.
Okay,
and they're going to compete. Okay. Yeah, Yeah, I mean, I'm very much a believer of efficient markets.
You're really smiling though. I feel like you like this story. You want this to happen.
I want to live in sci-fi world. I mean, this is my dream.
When I was doing my notes, I thought
Yeah.
David's going to hate this. David's going to think it's dystopian, like. And actually, you flipped on me here. Like,
Yeah.
you've gone.
This is my dream.
And you did a bit of research. Any initial feedback from consumers? I can see businesses like it. Any feedback from consumers so far, or people that were walking? I don't know. Does it go up high, then a straight line, or the quickest line to where it needs to go, and then drop low?
Well, there's prescribed routes because there's airspace that you can't cross over. Okay, so it goes around those airspaces or goes under that airspace.
Yeah.
But what it does, it hovers over the garden where I think you have to drop a pin where you want it dropping.
Okay.
Yeah. When you register, you mark where it's coming into. They then check that location is your address, and then it hovers over and drops it down by. And I love the biodegradable winch. It's like I don't know why they put that in. It's like, it's sustainable.
Well, do you want it to be biodegradable? Like, not at some point the winch is going to give in, isn't it?
I want to degrade while my food is like 18 feet off the ground. No, and it literally it doesn't even come down. So that way they're not interfering with the drone.
Oh, I see. I think, but ain't they going to have wind issues if that's the case?
No, because it corrects for wind.
What about the cable when it's got something on it though? Surely
it'll correct for that as well.
I don't know. I just think it should land.
Yeah. Well, they've done all that because helicopters have slings. You can do slings with helicopters. And that's all those calculations are done to keep the sling. So apparently, just get back to what we're saying. Yes, the customers were delighted because the food was hot, it was fresh. Nobody had opened the bag and had half the dinner for a start.
I was just written that down. Like, no one's had their food, have they? Yeah.
That's right. And they can track it on the app so they can see it in real time. And
have you seen some of the cars that this food's being delivered in sometimes?
Yes.
Like, they're dirty, they're dingy, they're just, they're little runarounds. Like, it's not the cleanest thing in the world. So
I think, and there's been just to go slightly off track, there's been
it's not like us.
There's been a thing in the news locally about a Deliveroo outlet in Wakefield that was run out of a migrant kitchen.
Oh.
So they're taking over a migrant hotel's kitchen.
There is some serious problems.
And they were delivering, it was called Big Boy Burgers, and they were delivering food out of this kitchen. No food hygiene rating, no nothing. So they've definitely got to clean the rolls up.
Well, look, I think there is as
an aside.
I've not read the full article yet. I've got it in my notes, and there is a severe problem with illegal, whether it's migration or employment, and riders. So I think that this will probably solve that problem.
I think this is the push, basically, is to get the reliance off. And there's also a big media push about there was another incident where so obviously some guys had arrived on small boats. They'd been put into a migrant hotel, and 2 days later they were driving or they're riding for Deliveroo using a third party's app, just like the woman did who with the thumb incident in Shrewsbury. So they've got major problems that they need to clean up from the supply side and the delivery side. So
in this trial, do they say how many drones there are knocking about?
At this moment in time, I don't know. I couldn't find that number.
Because I sort of wonder, like, zip forward 2 years and these trials all do well. Like, can you imagine? Like, the rate of expansion would be pretty fast because A, you're doing off with staff, you're doing off with the illegal aspect of that as well.
Yeah.
Customer retention might be better because the food's hotter and nothing's been stolen. It's not been delivered in a crappy car, and and then we're just gonna have these little things zipping all over the place. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Like, I don't know. Like, am I imagining this, or do you think that we'd hardly see it because?
The bigger the drone is,
the
higher they fly and the less noise.
They make.
Those zippy drones, are basically the little sort of DJI Mavics that they've got
and
extremely high turbine. The prop speeds are really high, and that's what's making that whiz. The bigger ones have got more rotors and they fly higher. You probably wouldn't even be able to hear them.
Okay.
They're cleared up to 250 feet, so you can go when you're flying, you can go down to a blade of grass. That's your minimums when you're flying a sort of small. You don't want to do that with a 747, but little planes. We're now down to a hard minimum of 250 feet, so you can't drop below 250 because that's the zone between ground and 250 feet that the drones are going to be running in. So they've already sorted the airspace out, and at 250 feet, I don't think you're going to be able to hear a great deal.
Yeah, well, you might be right then. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have to wait and see. I'd love to see one in action.
So I'd
have to move to Dublin, unfortunately.
Well, I don't think it's gonna be long before it hits the UK. To be fair,
well, we've got airspace problems until 2030. That's when the consultation. So they can be unmanned basically. So you can have like one guy monitoring about 20 of them. Whereas at the moment we've got to have one guy monitoring one drone. So it just renders the whole thing.
So you can't. This won't be completely automated then. No,
not till 2030. So the airspace regulations are all ratified and the AI is tested.
Oh, I see. Interesting. So,
but sci-fi world is coming at us very quickly.
I follow a guy on X, Twitter X, and he's an unknown McDonald's franchisee. Not even McDonald's know who he is, apparently.
Well, this sounds mysterious.
Yeah, and and he just does these every month or quarter. He does AMAs. So ask me anything.
Anything, yeah.
And they're really interesting, and I like following him because he's really smart. Although it might not be a he. It sounds like it's a he, but either way. And I saw the other day that someone said to me, "What does McDonald's think about you having this account?" And he says they don't know who it is. I've heard from other people that they didn't like it at first, but they don't mind it now that they see that there's nuance, and but he was saying when delivery is completely automated, that's when you'll see McDonald's switch away from the third parties, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eat, and you'd see them then completely switch to McDelivery.
Yeah,
because in every country they've got McDelivery. In Cyprus they've got little scooters knocking around, and over here they've got the name, but they don't actually utilise It's just there. It doesn't mean anything at the moment. Whereas in Cyprus I see little scooters knocking about. In Greece I think they've got little scooters knocking about.
Yeah, I've seen McDelivery and I've seen Wolt, which is their aggregator, isn't it? Yeah.
So I think that what you'll see.
I nearly killed one when I was there last time. So
well, that's never good.
Not my fault.
I think what you'll see is the likes of McDonald's and all that lot. McDonald's probably make a huge acquisition when the time's right, and they'd fold that in, and that would be completely automated delivery. I reckon we'll probably see the likes of Domino's, who are always ahead of the game of this sort of thing.
Yeah,
because I think that probably changes their business model. If
they have economies of scale, then don't they? And will you are you gonna get, if you've got the flight times and the speed times on these drones, you may end up with dark McDonald's. Just fulfillment centres.
Makes sense.
Where no customers come in and all they're doing is fulfilling.
You understand
drones.
Technology better than most, like more than me, let's say. Could Auckley Friary have a drone of his own without joining an aggregator? I mean, yeah.
I can't see. I think the cost. I mean, currently a drone's 10K.
Okay.
You could probably see that price coming down to 2 to 3. And all you'll need is 5 or 6 drones.
Will it be able to cope with like portions in the Midlands?
No, you're going to need a small helicopter for that. One of those that's capable of lifting a plane up. Yeah.
An Apache.
There's a brand of Russian helicopter called Hinds. The HIND. They'll just about be able to lift one of Charlie Collins' portions of chips.
I couldn't help myself. Sorry, I just couldn't. But no, it's like...
Sure he's listening.
It could probably mean, we're getting staff back in the business. Key staff will train the key people back into the business. And maybe it's the end of, like you say, riders and delivery drivers.
It's also going to do, it's going to remove geographical barriers.
Yes.
Somebody to get somebody to drive across Doncaster, I'm on the south side of Doncaster, to get someone to drive from the north side of Doncaster, which is a good 7 or 8 miles away, you're probably 20 minutes in the car, and then you're going to either eat it here. We're a takeaway. You're going to eat it here, or you'll take it home. In which case, it's going to be past its best. You've got a 10-minute to 15-minute window when it's really good, and then. So that will allow, I guess, once we've got a sort of a 25-kilometre maximum radius, I reckon that we can probably, if somebody wants fish and chips sort of this side of Rotherham, we can get to them within 15 minutes.
Imagine also like being in Whitby or Exmouth and you're at the beach and you can't be bothered to leave your spot.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen, isn't it? Like
it's gonna happen.
Could, like you say, you do your pin drop, your exact location.
Grew up loving Star Trek, and I've always wondered what happened if somebody all of a sudden invented a transporter. So, you can say, Stel, do you fancy going for a coffee? Oh, by the way, we're going to Brazil for it.
Well, it would help our WhatsApp group, wouldn't it? Because we
can't
seem to.
together, can we? But I always thought how removing those geographic barriers would change the world. You could live somewhere and work somewhere, and you'd be there in a day. And it's obviously not the same. But what we're saying is we're geographically breaking these barriers down, where my food can get 20 miles away or 15 miles away.
So I take it these would be insulated as well, wouldn't they? So
cold, they are heated. Yeah. They've got like a cargo pod,
or chilled if it's sushi.
I imagine so. Yeah, I can't see the difference between.
I feel like we are moving to like this WALL-E situation. WALL-E being the Pixar film, like where
is that where those people just never got out of
that people just sit in these pods and it moves them around and they just drinking big slurpy drinks and they fall on the floor, but they're just big masses of jelly and they can't And I do wonder.
Have you been to America recently?
I've never been to America, but I get the point.
Go and have a week in Disney World.
It's not America; it's Murica.
Murica.
So no, it's interesting. Look, I think what I do like about this is that if every business can get it, like if you're saying the costs end up coming down to like $2-3 then if it's not going to be annoying and they're all buzzing around and screaming, then you know what?
Well, then from what I've seen, there's going to be basically like we do if you fly. Boring flying information again. If you go above 10,000 feet, you're into what's called the airways.
Yeah.
Okay, so after 10,000 feet, sometimes it's lower than that, but roughly 10,000 feet, you've got to go, and the airways are sort of 10 miles wide, and you separate yourself by altitude. So if you're going one way, if you're going west or east, south or west, you do an odd altitude. If you're going north or east, you do an even altitude. So it might be the other way around. I can't remember. So there'll be prescribed routes. So the drones won't be hitting each other. So the one will go like 200 feet, then will come back at 250 feet. So you'll have like airways in the sky. So you don't have this noise pollution over town. So they may take routes over greener areas where there's less population. So I know they're setting the routes up and the airspace up now because I've seen the initial consultation for it. So as you can see, I'm quite interested in this. And I've always said that it would be something that revolutionises probably my business because I can get my fish and chips closer to the customer quicker.
Yeah.
As opposed to them coming to me. And I'm sure some people still want to come in and have the whole experience of having, the chat and the social aspect of it. But if you're going to come somewhere as a special occasion once a week because it's a pain to drive there and back, then I can get that food to them 15 minutes, piping hot. So then the competitive advantage of geography starts to drop away.
Yeah, and it probably gives smaller businesses that probably haven't got their pricing right at the moment with the way it is, probably gives them a reset opportunity to say, oh, well, this is now the new pricing structure, and it hopefully makes it more profitable for them.
I hope so. But you're going to also find that if the geographical barriers are dropping, that it's going to be all about the quality and the value for money.
Yeah.
So you can't get away with knocking out cheap fish and chips that are crap because you're in the middle of an estate. Because it's going to be as easy as to sort of fly some in from somewhere else that's better for the same money. So I think obviously there's going to be winners and losers in
anything
development.
In any development. Today's episode of the News Review is brought to you by Ceres P1 Chip Preparation. Because let's face it, everyone buys chips, even if they don't buy fish. Here's the science bit. When you peel a potato, a pesky enzyme called polyphenol oxidase reacts with oxygen and turns your chips brown. Does it to bananas, apples and so on. The P1 changes that environment so browning doesn't even stand a chance. No slime, no clumps, just clean, dry chips that hit the fryer and crisp up beautifully. Used right, it also evaporates on contact with hot oil. So you get better chips, longer oil life and guess what? More profit. Grab yours now at ceres.shop. Small bottles equal big freshness and free next day UK delivery. Major UK employers cited for underpaying staff. The UK government publicly named 524 companies for failing to pay legal minimum wage. Notable names include big retailers and food chains. Excuses ranged from miscalculating deductions and unpaid training time. The government recovered 16 million for 172,000 workers. That That doesn't sound like a huge calculation. But David, why did you choose?
Well, I saw this because it was Pizza Express that caught my eye on that one. And I know their debt is legendary. I don't know if they're still very much in debt, but I know they were restructuring, refinancing after they were like £1 billion in debt or something a few years ago. And that just sort of, I was looking through the article and I thought, that's an interesting one. Pizza Express ranked second. They failed to pay £760,000 to 8,470 workers. And that was between 2012 and 2018. And they said it was an unintentional technicality. So I started digging into this. And they've fallen into the trap of what the definition of working time is. So it's not as if they were, this like the minimum wage was at that point was £8 and they were paying people £7.50 an hour. But what they were doing were not calculating the wage properly. So there's activities that are counted as working time, such as preparation. So we have compensable. Sorry, it splits down between compensable and non-compensable. It's a weird word, isn't it? It's not quite.
Doesn't flow that
not
way.
As nice as your word earlier, but that's anyway. So you've got to compensate people if it's time spent on tasks integral to the job. I can't speak now. So if you got to get ready. You got to put your uniform.
So if you
on.
get, let's say I get to your shift for 11 o'clock at Oakley Friary.
Yep.
I should be getting paid from 1:45 when I'm getting ready. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So instead of like people coming in, getting ready, then clocking on, they've got to come in, clock on, get ready.
Oh, I see.
And this is the problem, because those 5 or 10 minutes that they were getting ready, getting the uniform on, because obviously, you're not supposed to come uniformed up. You're supposed to have your uniform in a clean bag, get changed at work, change out your travelling clothes, and there's no cross-contamination between anything that you've done. Obviously, you've scratched the dog this morning and it's jumped up on your T-shirt, and then you bring that to work. So that time has got to be built into the employer's time. And this is where they've fallen foul. They've basically got ready, clocked in, as opposed to clocking, got ready. So it's a technicality, but, for 6 years, if you're doing that across a business, 760 grand is owed. So yeah, it's if you're setting equipment or workstations before a shift, I mean, chefs prepping kitchen tools, you would imagine that would be part of it, but you'd any security checks required before starting. So airport staff fell foul of this. British Airways had exactly the same problem with that they weren't allowing sufficient time for the staff to go through security. So the sort of 10, 15 minutes spent at security should have been paid for. So they've not gone unintentionally. They've basically fallen foul of a law that's now been enacted.
See, and also worth noting, the article was basically that I read on this initially. I read about a couple on this, and it was saying that, it's these big employers that are taking the piss out of their employees. But actually, it's unfair to say that, because it's these big employers that are actually being audited. Hence, why you find these anomalies.
Well, most of the things came up because of staff complaints.
Okay.
So yeah, they were getting whistleblowers inside the business and saying this is not right, and it's mostly through the unions. I mean, there's a lovely quote, and it's from a guy called Paul Novak, and he's the General Secretary of the Trades Union Congress. And he says, wage breaches harm not just workers, but the broader economy. Every pound stolen from a worker's pocket is a pound not spent in local shops, cafes and high streets. Power to the people. Up the revolution. And it's just like, I don't think the stealing, it is more an administrative error. I wasn't even aware that this was a thing.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, like, everyone I know who puts their shifts together for fish and chip shops, they if they're not using a rota cloud or something, they're sitting down, they've got all their sort of their rota squares, they're putting in all the gaps, and they say such and such starts at 11. In their brain, it is run by what time they've put down on that sheet. And if someone's coming in 10 minutes early to get ready, they're not even considering this.
Yeah. Well, when we use rota cloud, and we've
does this tell you anything about that? Does Rota Cloud say anything about that?
No, not at all. No, there's nothing. I haven't found it. But it always gets. It used to get me annoyed when somebody used to clock in and go to the toilet, and I was like, go to the toilet and clock in. But clearly, obviously, the preparation time is part of part of their pay. So, if it's extra 5 minutes here and there, but that does add up to your payroll.
I did wonder if it was just like a bit of a wage creep. Like if someone's on salary and they've ended up doing more hours this month, I wondered if that's where it was. But this is completely interesting, really.
Yeah, this looks to me like it's, especially from Pizza Express, it looks basically like it's hourly paid people.
Yeah.
Some of the British Airways got caught out, and it was some salaried staff that when they'd worked out for the new starters, their salaries didn't cover. It dropped them below the minimum wage for like trainees, and that was a security issue where they had to spend 15 minutes going through security checks to get into the airport. That they weren't that if you added that their working time, they were under. But the thing is, the companies found this out, audited it, paid it, compensated the staff, and then the government still fined them for for doing it, even though it's all been corrected about 6 years
ago.
So
that money that's been collected, what did we say it was? 16 million?
16 million.
Okay, who does that go to?
Well, some of it's gone back to the people, but some of it, I don't think that 16 million is the fined these companies for breaches. So HMRC have it's an opportunity. It's just another tax, isn't it, business? But yeah, so you've just, I think the takeaway for our industry is you just got to be really careful, because it looks to me now that this new government, there's a general change in attitude, as we've all seen this.
Well, I think there's a lot. It's fair to say a lot of these laws were probably coming through anyway, but this government will be pushing them.
Sure. Yeah. Well, they'll be acting
on them, a lot more, and I think, but if, let's say you, I'm just thinking of Auckland Friary because you're here in front of me. If you're expecting 2 staff to come in for the 11 o'clock shift, 11 till 2, let's say, but they end up being there from 11:15 to get ready and 2:15 because they had a bit of a clean down. That's technically what they're getting paid, not the 11 till 2 shift. They're getting
absolutely, because we use the clock in, clock out. We use Rota Cloud. They clock in when they get you, the clock out when they come out. So that's all paid for. So we wouldn't fall into that category. But we used to have this where if it was 5 minutes late, we used to have you have to sign in and sign out sheet, and some of them used to sign out for 2 o'clock, and still 2:10 they were there. They'd forgot to sign out, or just 2 o'clock. So so in the past we've kind of fallen foul of that. But I mean, obviously, technology that we've sort of deployed stops all of that, because I always tell them, as soon as you come in, sign in.
It's an interesting topic, because I think a lot of people listening to this just wouldn't have considered it.
I wouldn't have thought. I mean, I've kind of Forrest Gumped my way out of that, really, because we've just done it through Rota Cloud. So, but if you're not using sort of an app, you're not calculating the time right, guaranteed if you've got young people on minimum wage, you will be technically underpaying them.
Yeah.
And it just depends how pissy this government's going to be, and how they want to punish businesses. And again, there's no love for any business, either big or small, from our current regime.
No, it doesn't feel like there is. No. And but I guess that is also a source of fairness, because if they're treating everybody dismally, then that's at least fair. Not that I like that sort of fare, but hey, it'd be interesting.
Well, I do hope those migrants that were knocking burgers out from that hotel were all paid the minimum wage, or there's going to be hell to pay.
I could imagine they were not. But hey, we digress. Have you seen the new calculators on our website? They are absolutely buzzing at the moment. We've built some amazing tools to sharpen your numbers. Gross profit calculator, fish cake yields, curry sauce and gravy calculators, labour cost to turnover calculators, even energy spend. And our favourite, the delivery aggregator calculator. They are all real eye-openers. They are all live now at Ceres.shop. Just click calculators on the top bar and explore our suite of calculators. KFC to pour 1.5 billion, that's a nice big number, into the UK and Ireland, creating 7,000 jobs. That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of chicken we're going to have to sell, isn't it?
That's a lot of chicken. KFC plans a massive 1.5 billion expansion across UK and Ireland over the next 5 years. The investment will fund new locations, menu innovation, what else can you do with chicken, and tech upgrades. The chain forecast 7,000 new jobs and closer partnerships with local UK suppliers. Well, I always think that's a bit of bump, isn't it? Because chicken is chicken. Like, so yeah, you're just opening more stores. The rest of it's bump. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, but you know,
I was looking at this the other day and thinking, like, so we know that KFC have had a bit of a spanking in terms of their market share. That you've got lots of other people coming and nipping at the heels. We've got Popeyes. They've got 55 stores now and expanding. Wingstop, 57 stores. Slim Chickens, 55 stores. I mean, Chick-fil-A's coming to the UK. Which is that now the number one in America?
Chick-fil-A, I think is, yeah.
Chick-fil-A, yeah. Sorry, yeah, Chick-fil-A, yeah, not Chick-fil.
It's fine. It's fine. It makes sense. I got it.
I've got Chick-fil-A.
And I think there's another one. There's another one coming. Dave's Chicken.
Dave's Hot Chicken.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's coming.
Well
as
done,
well.
mate, and congrats.
Thank you, mate. I've been working hard in the background on that one.
Yeah. All right. So my question was, what does it say about the current economy that is, dismal? It's not amazing. But what does it say that the likes of KFC, American burger chains that you haven't mentioned, but there's lots of,
Sure.
All these chicken brands that you just did mention, pub and quick service food groups, and some fish and chip shops are actually opening new outlets. What is it that they know about the economy that we aren't seeing? Or are they just planning ahead and thinking we're going to grow in this situation?
Well, everything is cyclical. Everything. Every economy has a cycle to it, and it has ups and downs. Unfortunately, and I'm going to get too deep into it. With the fiat system that we have of money printing, we have boom and bust cycles, and I guess these behemoths of food are big enough to plan 10 to 15 years ahead. And I see this as KFC. I mean, I went to a KFC about 18 months ago. We're going somewhere with my dad, and I can't remember where the hell it was. And we came back, we were driving back somewhere, and he said, "I'm hungry. Oh, do you fancy a KFC?" And I remember in the good old days when they did ribs.
Oh, really? Okay.
And they did biscuits. And the chicken.
Oh, that's very American then. That must be early on then. Yeah.
Oh, this was 1980s.
Oh, okay. So you was what, 36? Yeah.
I was 72 then. I'm 106 now. So So now when I was like 12 to 13 years old, it was a bit of an event to go to KFC and get KFC because it's very novel, but it was really good. We went about 18 months ago, and it was greasy, and the fries were floppy and horrible. And the chicken was grey, and the staff were bloody miserable. The place was falling apart. Half the screens didn't work. You had to order from those touchscreen things. And I don't like them because I always think there's someone that washed their hands who's used it last time. So I like to go and order at a counter and, keep some people employed. But you couldn't see the screen.
Did they wipe the counter?
I didn't ask that. I should have said to him, could just sanitize the counter while I lean here. No, but it was a very dismal experience.
A friend of mine said to me about KFC, we were talking about this exact thing. He's one of your villagers, actually, from Cyprus, and but he's in Nottingham. And he was saying he thinks that the best KFC is wherever you go and it's got a lot of foot traffic. If it's a very busy store, like a service station or something, if you see a queue, that's the time to get it, because yes, you might have to wait, but it's fresh and it's moving. But I do think like KFC haven't had it easy. I think where they had a few years ago, that whole chicken issue where they couldn't get hold of chicken, that was a huge, like, not being funny, you got one job. Make sure you got chicken.
It was such a problem. People ringing 999 as an emergency.
Yeah, that was horrendous, man. What is wrong with people? But then I do think, like, one thing, I did a bit of a test on this not long ago, and I looked at their prices year on year. They are pretty much 70% up than they were on the year before COVID. Yeah. And everyone says, fish and chips is expensive. We can't compete with everything else around there. And I'm like, 1 minute. Look over there.
The price is up. The quality's down. The size of the portions are down as well.
Yeah. Well,
it just doesn't seem that. I was sat watching. There's a guy that had a zinger burger at a service station. I grabbed a coffee. I was coming back. It was the other day. I was coming back from the KFE ball, and I had to go and I did a long loop round because I had to go and pick a present up for the missus for a birthday. I stopped on the way back to get a coffee, and there was a guy sat having KFC Zinger Burger, and when I lifted the bun up, there was just hardly any zing
No.
in the Zinger Burger. It was tiny.
Yeah, the lads at work love KFC. Absolutely love it. We're right next to Corley Services. I treat them once a week, whatever they want out of there.
Yeah, you got Waitrose, didn't you?
Why did you have to
Waitrose.
say that? Why did
It just reminds me of the Robert Maxwell story where it was champagne for the board members and beer and sandwiches for the workers.
I offer them whatever I get from Waitrose, which is basically just chicken and zero yogurt. And they laugh at me and think I'm the weirdo. So, and when, to be fair to them, I am the weirdo. But they're not interested in that. They're young. They're like 20 years old.
You made a rubber and bullets of that.
Yeah, exactly. So, but they absolutely love KFC or Burger King. They're not too enamored with Subway, which is there, and they don't seem interested in that. There's this noodle concept, Chosen. And they're not interested in that. But they seem to enjoy it, and I think they seem to have that market tapped up. And the food always does look good there because it is very busy.
It's moving quickly.
Quickly. Same with the Burger King; it's moving very fast. But look, back to my point: 70% up. McDonald's 65% up. So when we're saying as an industry, fish and chips expensive. The difference is that McDonald's and Burger King didn't scream about them being up 70%. They just carried on plugging away.
Well, I mean, and the public's perception is that fish and chips should be cheap.
Yeah,
a cheap meal, and we kind of locked in on price. I was telling you earlier off camera. I'm kind of the go-to guy for BBC Radio Sheffield now, which covers South Yorkshire. And I went on. They were talking about heating kitchens and how you cope with it. So I went on and did a little bit on sort of the afternoon drive time radio show, and we talked about heat, talked about hydration, talked about letting your staff go outside for 5 minutes to cool down, and and then he said, "Oh, fish and chips, it's expensive now, isn't it?" I was like, "Yeah, so is everything else. Everything's gone up. We've just gone up in line."
Yeah.
And you feel like you're defending yourself
absolutely
for doing it, because obviously we're if the price of chicken goes up, you have a screaming and shouting fit the girl behind the counter. It's like
no one in the office is hearing that. Yeah.
Well, so what? It's not to do with me. Whereas they're having a go at us, and we're right there. We stood there listening to.
So what you're saying is you should put a sign up in your shop saying, "Don't have a go at me, have a go at my staff."
No, just say ring head office for complaint.
Give him
have an answer phone in a London office.
That's what the NFFF should do. Set up a number and say this is a national complaint line for expensive fish and chips, and it could just be like a dead answer phone.
Well, listen, we can do this. Anyway, I've got Andrew's phone number. We'll just put it out there.
Oh, no,
just
that'd
if you
be
want to
horrendous,
complain,
mate. That'd be horrendous. You see, that's where you're nasty. I was saying it could be a dead answer phone line.
Joke.
No, you've done it already. I bet you I can see
it. I'm not going to do it on a toilet wall either. It's not going to happen. So let's go back to some numbers.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're going to open 500 new restaurants over the next 10 years. Okay, that's a lot of restaurants. 466 million earmarked for new outlets. They're going to have 200 of its existing sites are going to get refreshed with designs and the latest digital technology, which is about 20% of the current estate. And there's also a major employment drive with 583 million set aside to create 7,000 new jobs across the KFC supply chain. Obviously, when you have more shops, you're going to need more staff. And it says a significant portion of the investment, 404 million, will be directed towards strengthening relationship with UK suppliers, which is supplier for chicken is Pilgrims Europe. McCormick produces the gravy. Sorry?
Two Sisters Group? They must be on there.
They're not mentioned.
They're the biggest chicken supplier in the UK.
And then Salad Grower. I mean, is that going to make it so it's more efficient to get from A to B, or is it going to get better? Because it is not. As I say, we've talked about this. It generally, unless you get into a very fast-moving place, it's not a great product.
No, but I do think that's the nature of the product as well. Like, fried chicken is absolutely stunning when fresh. Like,
yes,
it's one of those things that I crave done fresh. And I made some grilled chicken the other day, and I just did it with pepper and salt and one of my favorite ingredients, MSG.
Yeah.
And honestly, as a grilled product, I just kept smelling KFC, and I said to Mira, I really fancy KFC now because it smells so identical. Like, probably the MSG that did that.
I'd imagine that would be the key driver.
So, but no, I think KFC, I think done right, is stunning. Like, you know, and look, I think we probably give them a hard rap because they are everywhere, and you know, just like McDonald's probably get a hard rap, and all these trendier places like Five Guys, everyone looks at them fondly because they think, well, I'm paying. You know, I took Alex to every year he has a heart checkup, and the little treat afterwards, I say, we'll go wherever you want to go for something to eat. So we go Five Guys, and that's pretty much been a choice for the last 3 years. And it's like, for a burger and fries, it was like 18 quid. You know, and I think it wasn't as busy as a McDonald's. Like, there's nowhere near as many people in there, and they only had like 2 staff behind the grill and 1 pottering around. So obviously their staff base is completely different to a McDonald's. But like, no one's really complaining about the price of that burger, you know. And I
is that the corporate versus private business?
Well, it's not private. It's just as corporate. It's just smaller.
No, I'm saying that people, it is corporate. But what's the point of complaining? Because who are you going to complain to? No one's listening.
I think, I don't know. I think it's the way I think it's a bit of chicken and egg. I think it's probably the way we react when a customer complains. And I also think that fish and chips is cheap, but we portray it as we worry about all the externals, and we probably talk about what we talk about behind the scenes to customers. So,
and the problem with our business is that we are entirely dependent on a foreign country to supply our protein to us.
Possibly, yeah.
That's the supply chain dependency, given the fact that we're a country that's surrounded by water and fish.
Yeah.
Which we don't seem to...
Just not the fish we want. That's the problem.
No, it's not, no.
Yeah,
we do land cod. I mean...
Nowhere near what we need.
But nothing near... It's about 10%, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't... Look,
Peterhead and...
I remember chatting to a fisherman a few years ago on the podcast, and I said, what increase would it take to basically mean that the UK fishermen can't cope with the demand? And he said literally another 5% would fall apart, and because they've not got the processing plants, they've not got the vessels, they haven't got that, and
there's no infrastructure doing it.
Well, it got decimated or it got sold off. There's a lot happened, you know. A lot of the quotas got sold off.
It's 90% of their economy, isn't it? Fish.
Yeah, but people don't realise that. I know a lot of Scottish fishermen talk about the decimation, but a lot of those old Scottish fishermen sold their quotas to other countries or other ships. Yeah, so I think that it's not as easy as that. But you're right. I think we do rely on a main product coming from, like, wheat and potatoes come from the UK. We've got a surplus there, a mild surplus. So whereas protein, the fish element comes.
And now we realise that we're extremely exposed to political and international pressures, such as Russia.
Yeah, well, Russia was the biggest supplier to fish to the UK.
60%, isn't it? The white fish comes out of Russia.
Absolutely. Another negative aspect of this article wasn't from me; it was from people reading that. I was reading the articles about it when I was building up the article for us to write it. And a lot of people saying, oh, this is 7,000 good jobs. And something came across my feed today, actually. And it was where 16-year-olds can get a job. And I'm just finding it now. And it says 8 companies where you can work when you're 16. Weatherspoons, 16 to 17-year-olds, $7.50 to $9.12 an hour. JD Sports, 16 to 17. Oh, just assume it's all 16 plus to 18. $11.49 to $12.31. Pets at Home, $10.17 to $12.12. Waitrose, and of course, Waitrose is on the list.
Of course.
Yep. $11.35 to $12.87. And I was thinking to myself, if you're 16 earning that sort of money. I had a friend of mine on the phone the other day saying he's looking for a manager that he can leave in his fish and chip shop, which is a very busy fish and chip shop, very good shop. And he wants to sort of work it when he's here a little bit and then go Cyprus and live his life and then come back whenever he feels like it, which is technically a general manager, although he's saying manager, and only wanted to pay them £15 an hour. And I'm like, well, if I'm looking at this and like a 16-year-old can get, the top figure here is $12.50, $12.87. Wow. Like these ain't crap jobs. Like these are the wage balance now in the UK is not what it was pre-COVID.
No, not at all.
And obviously Brexit has helped with that. And I remember one of the arguments with Brexit at the time, for this was pro-Brexit. I remember one of the arguments was that if we leave the EU, wages will go up. And everyone said, no, that's not true. And it has become true. And I think, and I remember talking to like lorry drivers after Brexit coming to the factory in the warehouse, and they were saying it's so much better now, because before, when they'd go to their management and say, I deserve more, I've been here 7 years, I've never took a day off ill, blah blah blah, they'd just say, look, there's 10 of you waiting to take this job. If you don't like it, leave. Whereas obviously post Brexit, there isn't 10 of them lining up to take that job, and they've all had pay bumps. So, I think that I don't think it'll be my point of mentioning all of that is that I don't think it'll be 7,000 crappy paid jobs. But then again, if everything moves upwards, is 1250 going to look crap?
Yeah, I mean, this is where we're unfortunately, this is where we're heading, and we're getting squeezed on the rising costs, but we're finding the ceiling on the price and the revenue.
Yeah,
it's a warm day in.
It is warm in this room.
Yeah, warm. I've got. Yeah, I can see you. You're very. It's a warm day in there. Your perspiration is impressive, sir.
Yes,
that's not going to make it onto video.
It might.
It might. Onto audio. I think that's the way it's heading. And it's not just the fact that there's less people in the market. There's less willing people in the market as well.
Yes,
where a lot of adults have decided that they have anxiety and depression, and they're going to just sit on PIP or disability, or as it's an alternative at this moment. It's a viable alternative at this moment.
You could argue though, if wages are going up and those other either in work or out of work benefits are being reduced, or not going up at the same rate, you could see how sooner or later it's going to
pressure.
Work. Yeah. Why am I sitting at home when, I'm not suggesting that everyone that's not working isn't poorly. But there is a portion of them. Those people, they'll start feeling the pressure. And I think, and I think this government, I think they'll actually push them hard too. I think.
Well, I know they've tried to.
Yeah,
and they've had to walk it back because of the number of MPs.
Is that right?
That have said,
that's what's going on at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. They've watered it all down, like everything. Angela Rayner came in and said, "We're going to do 0, day right. We're going to do A, B, and C, and we're going to, smash the businesses. The workers are all the king, and they will drive the ship and everything." And then when they've sat and looked at it, they've said, "Oh, hold on, just a minute. We've got 2,000, company insolvencies this month, and it's growing. Perhaps we might have pushed a little too hard. I don't know. They're going to have to find a balance. I know it's only between their socialist ideals and the reality of business and the world as it is now.
Yeah. And I know it's only anecdotal, but I was chatting to a friend the other day who works in a food factory. It's a very busy food factory, and they make some somewhat ready meals. And he said about a year ago when he started there, they were doing 7,000 meals a week. And there was about 14 people. And now they're doing about 12,000 meals a week. And they've got 8 people. And he said, as people they've invested in machinery, but as people have left, they've just not replaced them. But he said, I'm getting to the point where I can't carry on like this. And others are. And he said, I'm just going to end up leaving. And he said, ultimately, chatting to someone else, he said, this is the point of all these laws. We have to then look at our business to make it more efficient. And they've obviously done that. They've cut back on the NI, but now they're in a huge profit surplus, really, because not only are they busier, but they're obviously got less people. And I think you're seeing a lot of people now, when people leave, they're not replacing them. Like the flour mill we use, and I know a lot of suppliers that we use, that when people have left, they've passed that one job over 3 people.
Yeah, and there is a tipping point where people, there's just enough. I mean, it was like Henry Ford just used to speed the production line up, didn't he? Like a second a week or something. So it was imperceptible to notice.
Yeah, because if you did 30 seconds in one jump, people would be like, oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, you can't do it. But this whole thing that with this mantra that we had, the previous Conservatives were sort of like, we have to do more with less. You can't. You just do less with less. It gets to a point where you end up sort of cutting your own revenue because, say, you get a critical mass of people that leave, and your business cannot then produce the 12,000 meals a week. You're back to 7,000 with what you've got, and you're letting your suppliers down. So there's got to be a balance, and we're at such a flux point with our economy and the Western economy, given the amount of debt that we've all taken on due to COVID and everything else, that we're having a hard time sort of resolving that.
I do think there's two schools of thought here, because you mentioned we might have a ceiling price in the industry.
I think we're finding that
we
now.
might have a ceiling price when it comes to a fish and chip shop in a normal road down the street. But fish and chips as a cuisine doesn't, because I've seen, the Ivy can sell fish and chips for $29.99. And they don't sell as much, but pubs can sell it for $19.99. Other pubs can sell it for $12. So
the context of our takeaway.
I think that's where it probably is. But I do think also that's where a messaging can really come in. So, for example, I think if customers come in and say, "Oh, that's bloody expensive," maybe they've not been in for a while, you just say, "Well, my staff have had pay rises." I think no customer ever balks at the idea of staff having pay rises.
They don't balk, but what they do is they cut the portion sizes down. So we've moved from 70%. So we used to have a 12. No, we used to have an 11, a 9, and a 6. We still have the 6 and the 9. So the 12, 11, 12, it was never 12. It was, it was just slightly over 11. That's died a death now. The price rise has killed that. Plus, there was very little availability of bigger fillets on the market. So we had a problem sourcing them at the time. So we were left with 9s and 6s, and 9s used to be about 70% of the trade, 6s about 30% of the trade. We're roughly 50-50 now. So people have cut the portion size down because I think they've got an idea of they want to come into a takeaway and spend £10 on fish and chips, whether it's a 9-ounce in chips or a 6-ounce in chips. And it's like, I've got a number in my head and it's there. So our prices have gone up, but our average spend per head hasn't that much. So, it's just it is what it is, and I'm sure it's transitory, and it doesn't help that we're having to pay an enormous premium for now to secure that quality fish.
And to those listening to my point about pricing and talking to customers, I fully accept that I am not at the coalface. I haven't worked in a fish and chip shop at that level, for quite a long time, and I do think maybe I am a little bit an idealistic and an optimist. So
you've got a better overview of what's going on, because all I can see is my numbers, my.
But I'm also not at the coal. No,
but you got between the two, you'll get a synthesis of what's happening really, because you've got a very good overview of what's going on.
Yeah. If you're not on the Ceres mailing list, you are missing out. Each week we send out one email, just one, but it's packed with offers, news, competitions, and podcast updates. No spam, no fluff, just the stuff that's important to your business. Sign up at ceres.shop or in the episode show notes and stay ahead of the game. Sausage maker Blakemans joins Cranswick in £32 million acquisition. Cranswick, a major UK food producer, has acquired sausage maker James T. Blakeman & Co. in a £32 million deal. Oh, sounds like pennies. The move is a strategic consolidation to expand Cranswick's reach in the food service sector. Blakemans will retain its branding and operations. David, I know you love a good sausage.
I do love a good sausage.
And we are going to go into why, but why did this jump out at you?
I just think it's getting to a point now where even very successful businesses such as Blakemans, I mean, they've grown from, like you say, they've grown from a shed at the back of a property,
a bit like Google,
to something, garage with servers, to international spy network. Sorry, that's Google, not Blakemans. Microphones and sausages? I don't think so. And it's just, but are we getting to a point now where these family businesses, to survive and to move forward, have got to be part of something much bigger? Or has kind of, I know the guy that set the company up, that's the James Blakeman, isn't it?
No, well, he's passed James's dad. That's James's dad, I think. Yeah.
James's dad?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. So he passed away, didn't he, recently?
Yeah, that's the dad. Yeah.
That's the dad, right. Yeah. Okay. So So I don't know if that the dynamic changes now, if that the legacy.
As long as I
didn't want to sell because of because we've got people who say you're selling this shop over my dead body, and as soon as they've gone, the next generation's free to make their moves.
So James is the dad, or the founder, I think.
The founder, yeah.
And Philip is the person.
That's right.
Yeah, and he's the person that I've ever known in the industry from industry face. And I think, well, number one, well done to the family.
Absolutely.
Providing they wanted to sell, well done to them. And if they didn't want to sell, well done to them, because they've got
they've sold.
So congratulations as someone who owns a business. That is fantastic.
I don't know them, so I'm just
I like anybody. I'm
waxing lyrical about what's gone on.
I'm quite gracious. I don't know them, but I mean, I'm quite gracious to say that well done to anybody who's checked out and got that sort of lump. Well done.
Absolutely.
They deserve
Everyone
it.
needs an exit strategy,
and they're a business that have massively grown over the years, like constant reinvested. So they've been rewarded.
But the clever thing is though that Cranswick has obviously huge supplies of pork. Yeah. And not a particularly great reputation in animal welfare, as we can probably discuss that in a little bit. We've covered that story before.
I think there isn't many big companies I think when you're swallowing up as much pork as someone like Blakemans, and Cranswick, which is probably a lot bigger than that. I think that production of meat is always going to be a hard thing, and pork is very intensively reared in the UK. Well, like anywhere, actually, it is anywhere.
Not quite as bad as those 32-story blocks of sort of industrial pig farms in China.
No, we're not there. And actually, in actual fact, the UK is still ahead of the game when it comes to animal rearing.
Absolutely, yeah.
So so I do think, and also, I don't think Cranswick own farms, in fairness. What they've probably not done is tightened up their supply chain as fast as what we'd like them to, maybe, and said, this isn't acceptable. But, there's bad growers and farmers everywhere. That is, but there's also a million good ones for every one bad one. I actually think a bit deeper than this, though. I think that what we're going to see, is if you look at it from a manufacturer point of view, someone like Blakemans, who are trying to grow all the time, because that's their pattern for the last 30 years, is growth, growth, growth. There becomes a point where you can't get access to material. And I don't care what anybody thinks listening to this. A sausage is not the finest pork bellies and pork loins and pork fillets.
It is not.
It is everything but the squeak, as they say. And I've been around a couple of sausage factories. That sounds wrong, but just normal sausage. And I remember, there was one in Warsaw that I went to, and they had a pallet box, and it was a really cold room. But the pork belly that I could see and the shoulder looked very a bit grey. It was obviously been frozen, obviously, but it looked a touch grey, And I remember saying to the guy, why does it look like that? And he goes, because we're using offcuts, we're using trim. It's come out of butchers. It's come out of industrial pork producers. And what Cranswick's going to have a lot of access to is trim and MRM. Yeah. So mechanically recovered meat, for those that don't know. And that's when they clean down the machine, scrape it up, and they put it in a box.
Crush the bones, get the...
Yeah, well, I'm not sure they
do that.
No, that'd probably go to animal feed bones. Oh. See, the bones, if I'm right, and anything that's left on the bone would go to a company called Ceres. Ceres, you'll see them up where you are in Doncaster. We've got one down here where we are in Atherstone. So that's something we have in common here, David. Ceres also owns Nortec and T-Quality.
And
Refood. So a lot of the bone material will be going there, and that'll probably end up going to make fertilizer and stuff like that. Honestly, have you ever driven past a Ceres site at night?
No, I haven't had that pleasure.
Absolutely stinks. We've got one literally just down the road near the garden centre. It reeks. Because they're turning fats and everything into something else. And but what's left before that is trim. It's this. It's MRM. All of this. And Blakemans, I would imagine, if they're growing as fast as they've been for the last few years, they probably struggled to get it. Whereas now it's it's even better because Cranswick, it's just interdepartmental. It's a warehouse transfer. Oh, send all those tons of bits to there. So it not only brings down costs, but it means that Cranswick have got an outlet for that.
It's an absolute, a vertical integration, really, when you get from supplier to producer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's an outlet for it's a clever move. I just hope it's not going to change. Now it's a big, it's a small part of a big. I hope it's not going to change the ethos that Blakemans have in terms of the quality.
I don't think most people buy a sausage based on their ethos, though, do they?
I don't know, but they do make some nice sausages.
No, I'm sure they do. I'm not knocking
their
that.
sausages, for now.
Yeah. Well, and that was leading to my question: is you've been obviously you're interested in the sausages because you've been obviously trying to develop a sausage room. Yeah, in the non dirty way.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's just ready. We're just waiting for plumbers now to finish off. But we've done it we've not. I didn't want to get. You get into it, you think we'll just use this little piece of equipment, and then you realise there's no way this is going to make enough sausages to keep even us satisfied. So then you go and buy a bigger piece of equipment, and then that's $2,500 worth of sausage pressure pump machine, and then you think, well, we're going to have to pay for that, so we'll have to, so we've not done it with debt, we've done it with
money,
retained profit. So we've taken this time and played around with the recipes, but we're nearly there. But it's nice that we.
So I remember right at the beginning, you were trying to make the sausage with the nicest loins and the nice, and then I remember saying to you at the time, like, no,
not going to happen.
You need belly, you need this because the flavour just won't be there. And
we've managed to get in with a pork farmer, and it's red tractor assured pork. It's really nice. He introduced me to his pigs, and it's one of those, that lock, stock, and two smoking barrels.
Oh right, yeah.
Brick neck, and he says never trust a never trust a pig farmer. Yeah, I'm thinking, am I going to ever see my children again? It's like going down this lane with a.
I love that.
Great. Nice pigs.
Great.
So, so it's just interesting and just the way the world's moving is that if you're not part of something much bigger, even a very big company it could possibly struggle, And I saw it as the fact it was a strategic acquisition, or it secures their future.
Yeah, it could be either that, or who knows? In 3 years, the Blakemans that are in the family might move on. You don't know. But
there's usually some golden handcuffs, isn't there, to keep them there to transition the business over, train new management. So we'll see how it comes. I just hope it doesn't change the product at the end.
Yeah, we've got a Cranswick near us in the industrial estate. I walk through all the time, and I know obviously people locally, they never talk negatively about it. There's never been any negative stories. But again,
it's been some obviously things going on in the pig farm.
Oh, you'll always get a bit of that, I think. Yeah. Always.
I think it was called thumping.
Yeah, probably.
It's where
but again, it is one of those things like the volume of food that we produce in the UK is actually quite astronomical.
Well, they were saying that there was evidence of cannibalism. If you've watched Clarkson's Farm,
animals do
that. I couldn't believe that
providing it was the animal that did it and not one of the
something else. Not Clarkson.
But I do think that I'm really pro British farming and British food industry because I've seen the opposite side. I've been to places in Europe, and you think actually, so
the axle in the
there was that, of course, and then
the iron in the water for it.
And I remember that wasn't Europe, that was Thailand, and that was also a third-party story. That was anecdotal, but
you didn't go to Thailand?
No, unfortunately. Vietnam. Sorry, that was Vietnam.
They weren't having a tour of Southeast Asia.
No, that would be great.
And the go-go bars.
We should do that, shouldn't we? Not the go-go bars.
Not the go-go bars.
No, but I was interested because I went to a meat factory in Cyprus, and not far from your village, actually. And
that's a shock. Was it pork?
That was their main item. Yeah. And I remember walking through, and in relation to this sausage factory that I went to in Warsaw when I was like 1920, so 15, 20 years later, I'll go to the one in Cyprus. The one in the UK was spotless. You could eat off the floor. Yes, I said the meat was a little bit grey, but it's also been frozen. It's trim. What do you expect? The meat in Cyprus, the meat factory in Cyprus, the floor was a bare concrete floor. The ribbon blenders were in the ground. We were walking through. There were dogs following us. Yeah. Dogs, ribbon blender on the floor, meat on the floor. A year later, that company went bankrupt. And one thing I noticed in Cyprus this year, and to anybody listening to this that's from Cypriot origin or going to Cyprus on holiday, just look out for it. All the processed meats in Cyprus are pumped with water and carbohydrates. So, for example, even just looking at something like ham that you put in sandwiches, You know, over here, ham doesn't have a lot of water in it. It's got 26% protein. In Cyprus, it's 14% protein.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of water in it. There's a lot of crap in it. And I think we like to put down the UK, but the Red Tractor Association that's our lowest, that's the lowest accreditation in the UK, and it's leagues ahead of many parts of Europe.
Well, my uncle had a pig farm in Aradipu. So, when I used to go, well, I still go, but when we went in the 70s and 80s, the bacon in Cyprus was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And the pork was phenomenal. And he sold up just before they went into Europe because the list of additives that had to go into the food, injections, growth hormones, everything that had to be added to make it European compliant, he just said, I'm not doing it. I've just had enough. So he sold the entire farm to I think a salami supplier. So, but they were resupplying. Can you remember when Denmark had the swine flu? They had to pull massive amounts. Well, you were taking sort of frozen sperm and embryos from pig farms in Cyprus to repopulate because it was the least messed about with pork.
Yeah.
And this is in the 80s, I think it was, 80s and early 90s. But yeah, it was phenomenal. And obviously it joined Europe and then had to comply with all the vaccinations. And so, we're quite connected to as a family sort of to pigs. And I remember going as a little kid and into the maternity unit, walking, I was going to take a pig home with me, so I had to be stopped. I was on the way outdoor with a piglet. So
it is one of those, and I think we like to bash the UK, but we don't have growth hormones in the UK. You know, like I saw an advert the other day for a butcher online, an online butcher, and it said growth hormone free, and I was like, all meat in the UK. Yeah, it's standard. But people don't know. So they think, this must be something special. So, I think that we like to say how bad the UK is, but actually we're ahead of the game. Have you ever wondered where David and I choose our stories for the news review? Well, David and I handpick them from articles either written by me, our team, or trusted contributors. We look at how each story hits the industry and what it means for fish and chip shops, hospitality, businesses, suppliers, and of course, staff. If there's a story you think we should cover, send it over. We might just break it down on the next show. All our articles can be found on www.ceres.shop/blog.
This was your pick.
Was this mine? No, this was yours.
No, it was your pick.
Oh, I thought it was yours. Well, either way, one of us chose this, and I thought it was you. But I actually says in it, why did you choose this article, David? But anyway.
Because you picked it.
Because you picked it. I didn't choose it. I agreed to it. Irish hospitality sector set for VAT relief, but economic clouds remain. Ireland is reducing its hospitality VAT rate from 13.5% to 9% to support the sector post-COVID. It's ages ago. And amid ongoing cost pressures. While the VAT cut is welcome, business owners remain concerned about the broader economic instability, rising costs, staffing challenges. There are also questions around how long the VAT cut will last, whether it will be passed on to consumers. David, why did I choose this article?
Well, let me answer that one for you, Stelios.
Go on. Why do you think it's an interesting one?
I think obviously we're the NFFF has got a long-standing campaign along with UK hospitality to get what they call a fair shake on VAT. Yeah, so it just shows you that first of all that Ireland has a separate. It's a much smaller economy than ours. It has a separate treatment for hospitality, and to a point where they're going to reduce it to even lower to 9%. I mean, what a dream that would be. And so it was saying that they're very serious about that, the pledge, and they're not labelling as a tax cut for business. It's about recognising that in every town and every village, there are small businesses creating employment that want to be able to keep going and need to be supported. I wish that message would land in the UK government's lap because, as I say, the received wisdom seems to be you want to be thankful we're not putting the VAT up. You want to you'll be grateful that it's only 20%, or it's not 25 or something. It's a huge amount to be adding to any business, especially small businesses, and because rising pressures, rising costs just amplifies the final product by that percentage. So we've had this conversation before. The tax take from VAT is at a record high. We've got a government that's very hungry for cash, and they won't clearly listen or give any sort of compromise or any special tax treatment to the hospitality industry, which seems to be now getting hammered in the insolvency cases. I think the record number of insolvencies now, I think we're about 2,500 a month. A lot of them are in the construction industry and hospitality. So, there's clearly help is needed.
I think one of the things I've noticed about hospitality closures is that for however many closures there are openings. And I do wonder if the government look at that and think, well, it's a buoyant market. If there weren't openings, I wonder if they'd be like, oh, no, we've got to do something. Yeah, because
did Kate say they're considered to be phoenix businesses?
Possibly.
That when one dies, another one's going to take its place.
Well, and especially in cities, because But I wanted to talk about this because obviously VAT is just something that surrounds this industry all day long. Like it's spoken about at every event, in our sleep, on groups, you name it, and.
You chose it.
No, I did. But I do think it's important because I like to talk about the differences between all types of VAT and also the countries. But I was listening to a podcast the other week. I got referred to it by Mark Drummond, and it was called Ireland's Pot of Gold. And I guess it wasn't, maybe not a podcast, but like a radio recording. Which
is the Amazon windfall.
Well, Amazon, all of this. So they were talking about like Amazon, Apple, Pfizer, all of these companies that were in Ireland and getting, a real low corporation tax rate. And the EU basically thought, this ain't right. You guys ain't playing ball here. They thought they were right. They thought they had a strong legal challenge. They either took EU to court or EU took them to court. EU won. Yeah, funny the European court. Fancy that. Yeah. But either way, they lost. But actually, it's not a huge loss actually because they made 16 billion out of it.
Was it? I thought it was 26 billion euros.
Oh, I thought it. Well, maybe my translation is 16 billion.
Apple had to pay 16.
Well, there you go. That's what it is then. So
I think it was 26 altogether.
Yeah. So quite a nice little chunk there, and I don't think their economy is massive. So 26 billion to them is like quite chunky. Yeah. Now what people don't realise about Ireland is that as of 2025, probably because of that court case, they are now running a surplus. Their economy is running a good budget surplus. But it is also considered a volatile, and it's also heavily reliant on a few large firms like I think it's Pfizer, Apple, Amazon, DocuSign, a lot of these companies that I use, except for Pfizer. So although they're quite fiscally strong at the moment, it's structurally fragile because they haven't made a lot of changes to their economy. And also, I went a bit deeper. I had a look at a lot of the wage brackets in Ireland. And like for like to the British counterpart, for nearly every personal tax, the UK was lower. So UK was lower in almost every category for personal taxes. Obviously, corporation tax is lower over there, but everything from a personal point of view in the UK is lower. And I did wonder to myself, is this why our government thinks we've probably got some headroom here because we're lower than most other places? And then also, the healthcare system in Ireland is actually in a worse state than the UK's.
Is that possible?
Yes, apparently it is.
Wow.
Because I don't know if I told you a story. About 6 months ago, I was on an Apple support call. I swear it was you I told the story to. And the guy over there was in Ireland. And we were trying to fix my laptop because I bodged something up, as always. And I was just chatting to him because we're on hold for absolutely ages together trying to fix something and test something. And he's from South Africa. He spent 10 years in the UK. Then he's been 7 years in Ireland. He said the property prices are ridiculously expensive.
Again?
Yeah. Healthcare is expensive. And healthcare is really, really poor. And you have to pay to see a GP. And he said he's been thinking about moving back to the UK. And funny, I was talking to someone else yesterday at the flour mill, and he's from India. He spent 10 years in Kuwait. and he's moved to the UK. And he said, I said, why'd you move to the UK? He goes, you can't buy a house in Kuwait. He goes, you have to be a resident, or as in, or something.
Yeah.
And he said he wanted a better education for his kids, so he's come to the UK. So maybe we look at the UK from inside. I know this is slightly from the outside, but this is slightly off track. But I think maybe we look at the UK and say, what a shithole.
It's ironic because it's funny you should say that, because my friend is a captain for Qatar Airways.
Yeah.
And lives in Doha.
Yeah.
And he has to rent because he can't. He's not.
Is that? I think he said, this chap said yesterday, Walter, his name was. He said that that I think one country he mentioned, it might be there. You're allowed a house for 99 years, but then you can buy it, but it's a 99-year lease basically, and then it reverts back to the government. I'm not sure which one.
Yeah, and when he retires, because he's the same age, he's a bit younger than me, but he's going to be retiring sort of 4 or 5 years' time. Once he's retired, he has to leave the country.
Yeah.
He can't retire there, so he's got to have to find somewhere to retire. So we always look at from the outside, the inside looking out, saying they've got it so much better.
Yeah. So
going back to this,
back to VAT for a second.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first on your next point?
Yeah, I was going to say to you that we get into a point where that if we don't do something to help, regardless of the pricing, regardless of corporate America investing huge amounts in this country, most of hospitality are small businesses still, pubs, restaurants, fish and chip shops, and we haven't got the economies of scale. We haven't got the access to finance that these major corporations have. I mean, McDonald's can just issue a bond sale, and straight away there's £1 billion in the bank account for expansion. We can't do that. So, there isn't a level playing field, really. So there's got to be somewhere to protect these small businesses that are massive employers of local people, unless the local economies want to get decimated too. Something has to be done. I guess one of the easiest ways is through lowering the tax burden at the very end of it. And now we've got the argument that it won't be passed on, it will be passed on. But can I bet you're...
No. I have this debate all day long, as you know, whether it's the pod squads, in our groups, with other groups that I'm in, with other individuals that I talk to every day. I probably take 2 phone calls a week on this. So it chisels my thought process, let's say. You've just mentioned McDonald's, and I've got a point about that.
Yeah.
If VAT reduction helps an individual business, and it will do, 10% goes into their pocket, let's say, they're not going to pass it on. I think that's pretty much, from talking to most people, that seems to be the consensus.
That's the consensus, but the consensus doesn't necessarily mean the reality that follows.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, but I think for most people, well, if people are saying we need the money to survive, then that tells me that they're not going to pass it on because they want the money to survive. If that makes sense. Yeah. I'm not disputing that.
I'll challenge that one in a minute.
But also, I have no issue with that. Like, people are free to do whatever they please. Sure. I think more the profit, the merrier. Like, if you guys get 10% tomorrow, well, bloody done. Like, genuinely. However, so let's say in the most rosiest way, it helps fish and chip shops or small local independents survive. You got an extra 10%. That's great. What does it do for the likes of McDonald's? And I really was blowing out this hypothesis the other day, because let me just run through this for a second. McDonald's has what you call a price stickiness. So if they've got a fillet of fish or a cheeseburger at $1.49, they're not changing that. It costs, millions of thousands to implement price changes and marketing changes. They're not changing it either. They might do some more meal deals or some value meals somewhere down the line, but they're pretty much going to stick to the same line as every fish and chip shop, which is we're not passing it on, or at least we're not passing on the chunk. So then there's a margin windfall. VAT drop goes to the bottom line, multiplying up operating profits across hundreds of thousands of stores. I think there's 1,500 stores in the UK. Expansion power. Now, here's the key thing. Higher profit equals more retained earnings, equals more locations. Lower tax means bigger and faster return on investment for each new outlet. So straight away, you can see now there's a competitive pressure.
Unless that tax relief is on turnover.
How do you mean?
So if your turnover is in excess of, say, 3-4 million quid.
Yeah, so then
tiers in.
Yeah, so then your problem
the
is,
VAT. So smaller businesses pay less, bigger businesses pay the same.
And this is why it gets me back to the point where we've already got a very difficult and muddled tax system. They are not barely going to change it to make it even harder and more muddled. And I think, and then also saying, but the argument that they're a big turnover business, well, they're also local franchisees. Yeah. So there your problem is they'll just say, well, actually, we had one business that owns 10. Now I'm just going to separate them off. It's not hard for them to separate them off and say, now I've got 10 independent McDonald's franchises. McDonald's Nuneaton Limited 1, McDonald's Limited 2. So what I'm saying is they can jump through all these hoops and they can still do that. So then you've got a competitive pressure because they can outspend all that, which they do all day long now. They outspend the smaller rivals in advertising, delivery tech, which we were talking about earlier, real estate, which they already do. So it further tilts the playing field. And another hypothetical, just because this is what, this.
I mean, there's go on.
I was just going to say one final hypothetical is look at someone like Greggs. There's a lot of fish and chip shops see Greggs as bigger competition than McDonald's.
Sure.
Probably especially at the lunchtime end of the market. What stops Greggs from thinking they're already dabbling a bit in hot food, which they also collect 20% on and send that on straight away? What stops them from saying, you know what, at 10% lower, we can do this thing. We can compete with these guys. What's stopping them from having, air fryers, bigger ovens, bigger fryers, or fryers, sorry, because they don't have fryers at the moment, and doing what the likes of you do and what McDonald's do. I'm not saying fish, but more fries and more so on. I think sometimes you've got to, I think a lot of our arguments in the industry aren't well thought through, and I think
I agree. And this is the problem is that because there's literally no consultation.
Well, there isn't any
lobbying.
There is no discussion either.
No, there's nothing. There's no conversation to be had. It's no. The other thing I was thinking, I've never understood why on earth, as I say, capital gains tax, corporation tax is tiered. Why isn't VAT tiered?
Because VAT's a consumer tax.
I know it's a consumer tax, but there still can be relief.
But then it would be a tax break.
Up to £90,000 or whatever it is, you pay nothing.
Yeah, so there's one
tier. Over that, you pay everything. Yeah, but any business that's doing less than £90,000 is either abstracting the tax or won't survive the year because the bloody costs are more.
See, I've
never understood why that for every business, the first £90,000, regardless, is tax-free. Just like you would with your employment or a capital gain. I could never understand why at £90,000 you kick in, and then that allows, it's about £13,000, isn't it, roughly? And that would be a £13,000 boost to every business with which wouldn't really. Would they notice it? I don't know. I would obviously going to notice it.
The problem is,
but there's got to be something that we can strike a balance because, as I say, 20% adding is not an issue when your food costs are relatively low. Start adding multiple X's onto gas, electricity, fish, and you're amplifying your price out at the end of the door to a point where. Are we hitting that ceiling now where people are just saying that's too expensive? And they don't understand that we're paying VAT.
I get that. But I think from my point of view, I look at it from my business, we don't ever see VAT like that. It's something that Xero deals with. We charge it on invoices and we deduct it off some purchases, but it's something that I don't ever handle.
Well, if we can lower the price to the customer.
But you won't because we just...
But how? Here's the thing, right? So you're looking at the micro connections between businesses, but you scale out to macro, and you'll find. So there's two theories. There's the neo capitalist theory of efficient markets hypothesis, where instantly the market knows the price, and then you've got the Austrian school, which is sound money, that says that the businesses may pass on some or all of the tax savings to consumers via low price to remain competitive or stimulate demand, especially in price-sensitive sectors like hospitality is. There's going to be a delay in information. So it might take 6 months for me to realise that the guy down the road's dropped his prices by 6 or 7%. And if I'm not getting the business through the door, I've got some headway to drop my prices. In time, the market will reset itself and it will find its equilibrium. It's not going to happen immediately, and yes, there's going to be a delay, but I think it would bring lower prices, and I think it would bring more customers because the money's going to go further. I think there's an argument to be said that there's got to be some mechanism to promote to protect smaller businesses and like single site pubs as well. They're closing every day. And that's an outlet for a lot of employment as well. So I don't think we've thought it enough. We're just obsessed by a number that we want it to be 9% or 15% for us. I think there's got to be a more smarter mechanism that we can employ to protect smaller businesses and single site operators. Because we had that conversation where on the pod squad where the guy had set up a business out of a hole in the wall. And then he'd grown his burger business and suddenly found out he owed a lot of VAT and couldn't pay it. So it is a barrier to growing your business, and it promotes more fraud. So would they get more by having less? I mean, there's a thing called I've just finished off. Go on. There's a thing called the Laffer curve that applies to personal income. So if you push, it's a parabolic curve, and it peaks at a certain amount, and as you increase personal tax on people, it's a disincentive to work and grow, and that we need to find out where the Laffer curve is for businesses.
What I'd say is I think you're right to some degree, but wrong in other things. And that's not, I don't think we ever, that's not a shot.
I'm hanging up now.
No, and but what I will say is I think you're right, but I think it all sort of comes back to VAT reduction doesn't actually help with VAT reform. I'd rather see a complete rework of VAT. Yeah?
Yes,
because I think it's incorrect.
That we agree on.
Yeah, and I think the threshold needs work, and I think that I almost feel like we need a segregated system for hospitality that basically says if you're going into this industry, you know what you're going into. It's a different threshold, different setup, blah blah blah. This is what it is, and it is a lower thingy and maybe a lower threshold and so lower percentage and also a lower threshold. But here's what you're getting into from day one, and you maybe have to. I'm just saying, I'm just throwing ideas out here. Sure. You might pay your VAT quarterly still, or you actually go to weekly and it's automated or whatever. I don't know. But what I'm saying, I think this just delays reform. Talking of constant, we need it drop. Because the reason why we can't have what Europe's got, which we just discussed, is because Europe applies VAT very differently, like a scalpel. We don't do that in the UK. We use it like a blunt instrument.
Yeah.
So most things are either 0 or 20. And we've got some energy products in between, like coal or whatever. Or I think they're at 10%. I'm not sure, but no one really knows because no one really buys that much. Only people that buy it know. Or or is it red diesel? But in Europe, you might go to a supermarket in Greece and chicken will be 7%, and chicken from France will be 12% because it's foreign, and deodorant will be 4%, and tampons will be 8%, and so on and so on.
Sure,
we don't have that in the UK. No. And so I think that there's more. It's spread better. We don't. So we don't have that now. In terms of what you said about the theory that the competitive market will push the markets down, I think in most ways it would. But over time. However, over time, what we've seen, rather than theory, we've seen the practical. In 2021, Tampax, tampons, sanitary towels, VAT went from 20% to 0. The price actually went up after. A lot of that price was swallowed by the manufacturers and then also the retailers. There was some green energy discounts with VAT that didn't get passed on in the end either because they said that price rises went up. Staff wages went up, and then children's car seats, nappies, baby clothes, etc. A few years ago VAT was reduced off them. The price didn't drop. So I think that
you are picking some rather inelastic markets.
No, I know, but the problem is
you are picking, whereas hospitality is a huge.
But there's also a lot of competition when it comes to buying a children's car seat. Because I remember when I bought my children's car seat, I found the brand that I wanted, went on Google Shopping, and chose the cheapest one.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I think that inelastic or elastic, I think it's human nature. Like, and I'm not knocking anybody for this. I'm just looking at it from a consumer's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
If someone said to me, "Hey, Stel, you can save X," well, I've got a family to feed too. I'm not knocking anybody. Anybody listening to this, when I offer a critique from the opposite side, it's not to say you shouldn't do what you want. Do exactly what you want. But what I'm saying is that also doesn't fall into the consumer's best interest. And that, because they can't, they're diametrically opposed. What a consumer wants is very different to what a business wants. Yeah. And they align when it comes to money changing at the till. But for the most part, everyone's got different wants and needs. So, and, like I always say to Charlie Collins, Charlie Collins always says to me, it's my job to get the fish as cheap as possible, and it's their job to sell it to me as much as possible.
Sure.
And that is where your needs are diametrically opposed, So I do think it's the same with VAT. Let's just have an honest discussion about it. Let's say the truth is we want an extra 10% to line our accounts and make our life worth working, let's say. And I'm not ashamed of that. But I think we need a positive message to go to government and say, here's what we need, because there isn't that. There's no discussion. There's no dialogue. Talking to the odd civil servant who doesn't really give a crap. Yeah, I'm not being funny. There's nothing more left-leaning than a civil servant.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So going to them and saying, hey, I think we should be paying less VAT. And the first thing they're going to say is, well, that's a consumer tax and no consumers are screaming. Yeah. And that is also true. Yeah. Consumers, they just switch off, mate. I'm convinced they know what VAT is, because when their plumber comes around and does a job for them, they'll say, oh, how much for cash? Yeah. So I'm convinced they do know. Yeah. I just, that a consumer wants the best fish and chips they can get. Ideally, the biggest portion they can get if they're lucky, and for the cheapest price if they're feeling extra lucky. Yeah. They don't care that VAT is VAT. I don't think it's their problem. I think.
No, I agree. But the trend of rising prices, at some point we haven't hit that point yet. But there's going to be a point where we are going to be priced out of the hospitality market. I'm convinced of it. I'm convinced. Not everywhere, but majorly.
I disagree. So that's where we stand on the opposite side of that.
That's fine. No, it's absolutely. We'll see how it plays out.
Because, like I said, if McDonald's has gone up 65% roughly in 6 years, if KFC has gone up 70% in roughly 6 years, have they hit their ceiling price? I think the difference is you don't see the CEO of Burger King, KFC, McDonald's all screaming from the front of the top of their lungs on social media, we can't carry on like this. We can't sustain it. Beef patty prices have just gone up. No, I think we're at the front. We control our destiny. Yeah. And I think if we keep pushing out negativity, we're going to receive negativity.
I agree with you. The messaging that we've had in the past is entirely wrong, and it needs to be about value for money and quality.
Yeah.
As opposed to the dismal news of death and destruction.
Yeah.
But there is and fish and chip shops are one aspect of it. But when you see 2,600 companies go to the wall in 1 month, the bigger that number is bigger than the 2008 financial crash, by the way, but no one sees reporting it.
But the difference is how many more have opened in that period. I think in 2000,
we haven't got that data just yet. But this is the first month after the first quarterly details, right? After the tax rises that have come through. So I only think you're going to start seeing the very beginning of it, because you've got to remember it takes 18 months for any tax rises to feed through.
Yeah.
So if we have this conversation next year, you might find a much different scenario.
I think you should put a pin in the calendar and let's do that.
We'll do that.
And I'd love to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think one last point I want to make on this is a friend of mine messaged me the other day, and he must have saw a discussion online, and he said, what I don't understand, he goes, let's just say the last 5 years. If someone's come into the industry over the last 5 years post-COVID, 4 years post-COVID, when VAT's back at 20, if they're new to the industry, they've done their research, why are they so aggrieved by VAT? You think their business model would account for it?
I agree. The business model account for it, but you can't get away from the underlying costs. And what I think is we started to see the limit of what customers will pay for our product. And that does worry me that we are starting to see that shrinking in volume in terms of the amount of fish that we're selling. But where do we go from here? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see.
Well, On that note, I go to the warehouse and the factory and see what the hell's going on there. Hey, you have a shop to run.
I shall go to the shop.
And no doubt you need to make a coffee because it's been an hour. Well, it's been an hour and 40 actually.
I sufficiently caffeinated myself before we started this process.
One question I'd like to ask you, David, is what do you think your favourite topic was today of the lot?
I don't know. I quite liked the VAT ones. It's always very contentious, and it's always.
Do you think it's because it all brings it on the opposite side towards the end?
Yeah, I think, and I utterly respect you, and I see where you're coming from, and I respect your point of view.
Again, I will finish that with.
But I did like the drones because, as I say, it's like sci-fi world. That's it's where I want.
Well, you were smiling throughout that whole thing. I think that one pleased you, whereas this one challenged you.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's got to be. Coming back to the last thing, there has to be some form of tax reform in this country.
I agree with that.
We are getting to the point where there's. I'll give you an example. I'll just finish it off. We've lost, on average, for the last 12 months, we've lost 1,000 millionaires a month that have left the country. One millionaire pays sufficient tax that you would need 30 professionals earning 55 to 60,000 a year to replace them. So we should be getting, really, to replace those millionaires in terms of personal taxation and consumption taxes, we should be getting 30,000 new jobs created a month, professional jobs. What's happening is, of those professionals where you're going to be in the more mature side of things, not working at Waitrose or whatever, stacking shelves, we're losing 6,000 of those a month to people who just said, I've had enough. I'm going to get a small job. I'm going to retire early, or I'm going to, I've got anxiety and depression. I'm going to go on some sort of benefit. So we're losing 36,000 jobs a month in terms of tax take. And I just wonder how long that's going to take to feed through before we start seeing enormous pressures on public debt and more debt growth, public services cut, or in October, even more tax coming through to make the shortfall of whoever's left, And I don't want to talk about doom loops or death spirals, but this government doesn't seem to have got a handle on what the hell's going on in the economy, and that does worry me as well.
Yeah, well, I think, again, how Charlie said about the fish? I think government's job is to do one thing, and our job is to do another. And I think
the government's job is to provide security and promote growth in the economy, not to rape anybody that they can. I mean, that's just it's a. Well, those millionaires that have gone aren't coming back.
I think what we need. Well, I think millionaires do what they can, and they do what they do. Yeah. They're very fluid in what they can do because they've got the wealth.
They're more mobile than anybody.
Their money is already in different jurisdictions and so on and so on. So they can do whatever they want when they want, and they will come back if the climate is right for them.
The billionaires have left. We're now talking about the billionaires. We're talking about people with 4 or 5 million quid worth of assets who've just thought, sod it, I'm off to the south of France.
If that's the case, we'll see exactly what happens soon. And but what we have figured out is that there are some places that look better than the UK, but aren't always better than the UK.
No.
And now it's different if you're a millionaire or a billionaire, because most places are probably better than anywhere because you can literally go wherever you want. It'd be interesting to see. And David, thanks for your time today. It's been
my pleasure.
Brilliant once again. Thanks for doing the research. Thanks for pointing us the right way. Thanks for being challenging, because I really enjoy that too.
Cool.
All right, mate. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
If you run a fish and chip shop, takeaway, pub, restaurant, or street food business, pretty much anything that serves hot food, the Ceres shop was built for you. From our batter mixes to musher pea seasoning to smart prep tools and cleaning gear, it's all trade stuff only, no fluff, no gimmicks, just stuff that works, backed by real industry know-how. And everything ships with free next day delivery across mainland UK. Head over to ceres.shop and get stocked up today.